Welcome to Marketplace Tech Bytes. It is our weekly roundup of the big goings-on in the tech industry and maybe some stories you missed. I'm Meghan McCarty Carino. This week, the TikTok ban goes to the Supreme Court. Plus, the House of Representatives has released a roadmap for AI. And the new year that could be for robo-taxis. Here to discuss all that is our good friend and former host, Lily Jamali. She's now a tech correspondent for the BBC. Welcome back, Lily.
Hi, it's great to be back.
It's so good to have you. Well, of course, you know the drill. You know what's coming. We always kick things off with our bite of the week. This is a number that gives us a little insight into our top stories. So, Lily, what number do we need to know this week?
Well, I actually put this question, because I knew this was coming, to ChatGPT, which has been rolled out in WhatsApp this week. A big development for them. And here is what happened.
What is the most important number in technology news this week?
This week, a key number in tech news could be the $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft.
Great answer if this was January 2022.
Right. Okay.
Which it's not.
Little Back to the Future there. Yeah. As of my last knowledge update, the biggest news in tech was...
Exactly.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the actual big news of the week, which is the TikTok case heading to the Supreme Court. Last year, last week, a federal appeals court upheld this bipartisan law that Congress passed that will ban the short form video app unless its Chinese owners agree to sell it by January 19th. TikTok asked SCOTUS to weigh in before then, and the High Court has agreed to do so. So, Lily, what does the timeline look like for this legal battle? I mean, are we going to get some sort of decision before that January 19th deadline?
I think we have to. And, this was sort of the plan all along, because remember that the parties in this case, so that would be the government lawyers that are defending the law, as well as TikTok and ByteDance, as well as a bunch of content creators that are joining with TikTok in this suit. They all asked for the appeals court to make a call on this by December 6th for this exact reason, so that the Supreme Court would have the opportunity to weigh in if they want to. They have taken that opportunity. Yes, it's only 9 days, but I think it's pretty likely that we will get some kind of decision. But ultimately, this is a clash between national security concerns and free speech rights. I think that, the Supreme Court justices are somewhat well-versed in those issues, but this overlay of technology and this app that I doubt any of the justices happen to be on, kind of throwing a wrench into things. They are going to have to read up on this a little bit anyway, and it'll be interesting to see what they decide.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had a number of folks on the show, that have an interest in this. We had one of the plaintiffs, actually, one of the TikTok creators who is a plaintiff in the case. We've had a number of legal scholars, and it is this kind of clash of First Amendment versus national security. It was kind of an interesting decision that the appeals court gave. It was a little bit more nuanced than sort of choosing either or. They basically ruled that, this law does not violate the First Amendment because it is basically protecting free speech from manipulation by a foreign power. I mean, what are some of the issues that are kind of at stake in this Supreme Court case, in a ruling of the High Court on kind of digital speech like this?
Well, to your point, I think the argument here is that we Americans have free speech rights under the First Amendment, but the Chinese Communist Party does not.
Right.
And the insinuation is that because TikTok is owned by ByteDance, that there's some sort of control happening on the part of China here. That was really at the heart of this law in the first place, that Chinese ownership of TikTok is a problem. It creates the possibility of China accessing data of American users, of which there are 170 million, according to TikTok. There's also the possibility of having the Chinese manipulate the content that we see here. TikTok has categorically denied that any of that is happening. They say that they've taken steps to ensure it doesn't happen. But ultimately, what we're going to hear from them in this case is free speech, free speech, free speech. You're taking that right away from 170 million people that want to be entertained on this app, that want to promote their small businesses on this app, and who sometimes make a living off of it, and that this is unfair to them. And that's what we hear from the creators as well.
One interesting wrinkle we could see is President-elect Donald Trump, who, of course, tried to ban TikTok himself during his first term. He has since changed his mind, as he sometimes does. He now says he will do anything in his power to save the platform. But this law, we should stipulate, was an act of Congress. If the Supreme Court upholds this law, Lily, is there much that the president can do?
Yeah, and we saw the CEO of TikTok visit Mar-a-Lago as well to endear himself to Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump, as much as he suddenly loves TikTok, I don't think he is going to be the ultimate decider in this case. I think it really matters what the Supreme Court decides, because forget about TikTok for a second. Look at Apple and Google, which run the app stores where most of us go to download TikTok to our devices. As long as this law remains on the books, even if Donald Trump says, don't worry about it, we're not going to come after you, they're still going to be flouting the law. And that kind of legal risk is not something that an Apple or a Google is particularly interested in. They've been mum on exactly what they're going to do here. But I just don't see them feeling comfortable with assurances from the White House if this law is still the law, and that if they would be caught in any way flouting that law. I don't think they want to do that.
All right. Well, now let's move on to some artificial intelligence news. This week, a House task force on AI released a 253-page roadmap for Congress detailing all kinds of government concerns with this technology and how to make sure the U.S. remains kind of on top of it in its development. Obviously, we're not going to go over all 253 pages worth, but what kinds of stuff are we talking about? What is covered in this roadmap?
Yeah, this is really a plan for how to go about making policy on AI. So some issues are, how do you make sure you don't step on civil liberties? How do you protect digital privacy in the AI age? But there's no actual legislation being proposed for now. And honestly, Meghan, that's the hard part, right? I get the sense from some of the commentary that I saw from the Congress people involved in this, that they weren't that pleased that they didn't get further along here. The person who headed up the task force, Jay Obernolte here, he's based here in California, he said that disagreements started to emerge about the language in what these bills would be, and that talking about specifics was starting to be counterproductive. So I don't think that bodes all that well for the future necessarily. But with Trump coming in, I think the bigger question becomes, does this task force matter? Or does this get sort of punted to congressional committees that will take over this work alongside the administration in formulating guardrails, or not, giving them free rein? We'll see.
I understand there is some sort of uncertainty about whether this task force will kind of continue to exist, or whether, as you say, this work will be punted to congressional committees. But I guess they are set to meet with Trump's named AI czar, David Sachs, in the future. I wonder, how the administration's kinds of priorities for AI might filter through.
Yes, David Sachs was a big fundraiser for Donald Trump, hosted a big fundraiser at his home in June here in the Bay Area, and is a member of the PayPal mafia, along with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, for folks who aren't familiar with him. So he is now, as you say, the new czar in charge of AI and cryptocurrency. He also has a stake in Elon Musk's AI startup, XAI, which I think bears mentioning here. In general, I think we can expect fewer guardrails under Trump, fewer proposals for guardrails versus Biden, where we have these task forces and frameworks being discussed. But I would just say watch this space because Elon Musk is a real wild card here.
Absolutely.
In general, doesn't like regulation very much. We know that about him, but he is also warned of the existential risks posed by AI if it goes unchecked. So honestly, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to play out. I'm very eager to see.
All right. Well, now we want to zoom over to an area of AI that is also very important to Elon Musk and what we might expect in the next year for robo-taxis. Lily, you reported earlier this month on the announcement from General Motors that it is suspending its Cruise self-driving robo-taxi project. What did you make of this announcement? And does it say something kind of more broadly about the landscape for autonomous vehicles and robo-taxis?
I mean, it says to me that Waymo has basically won in the race for full self-driving robo-taxis. That Cruise, which is a subsidiary of General Motors, just didn't think it could win. That's not their core competency, not their area of expertise. And, the competition is intense. It's not just Waymo. You have Amazon getting into the mix here. We know Elon Musk had that big event in October with the Cybercab, his robo-taxi project, which, he makes a lot of promises about what that will be. Oh, it's just, another year off, another 2 years off. But we're not exactly sure where things stand with him. But it does feel like Waymo has sort of taken the cake here. And I think it's also interesting this week watching their release of new data that they have put together alongside this reinsurance company called Swiss Re, looking at liability claims from collisions, showing an 88% reduction in property damage claims, a 92% reduction in bodily injury claims when you have the Waymo driver operating the car. So they're doing it. And they are now trying to kind of project that we're opening up the books. Look at how safe we are. And they really I think they have actually claimed the spot as the leader in this space.
Right. And they have expanded into a number of new markets, some big ones like LA in this past year. But let's circle back to Elon Musk and Tesla. They finally debuted their Cybercab, something Elon Musk has been teasing, as you noted, for a very long time. It's always just around the corner. Let's take a look at what this might look like. All right, as you have reported, Lily, this robotaxi is a little bit different. It doesn't have any sort of backup systems. There's no steering wheel. There's no, pedals. There's nothing for a human to take control. Also, does not have kind of the standard technology sensors, LiDAR, which Waymo taxis have. How close is this to actually hitting the road?
It's anyone's guess. I really couldn't tell you because Elon Musk has been making promises about this since, 2016, 2017, that it was just a little bit further off and it didn't happen. Now we see this concept car, but for now, that's all it is, just a concept. And, whether we will see them producing these at scale and deploying them and getting the regulatory, acceptance, the sign off in all these different places that they want to be active. Those are all big questions that I think loom over Elon Musk's plans. There's also this issue of, the promises that he has made about supervised full self-driving.
Right.
He had to kind of roll back the terminology full self-driving and call it supervised, which I think is saying something about the relationship that he has had with regulators, because there have been a lot of issues with that. People assuming that they can be more, I would say, less involved than they really need to be using that technology. The issue with, the cameras and AI that Tesla wants to use here versus what Waymo is doing with LiDAR, which you mentioned, radar, the sonic equipment that's basically painting a constant portrait, a 3D portrait of where the vehicle is at any given time. That stuff is really expensive. Tesla is
Right.
opting out of that. And I think that raises a lot of questions about the safety aspect, and whether it will get by regulators, because it's not just the people in the car, it's all of us that are walking around interacting with
Mhm.
these cars when we had absolutely no interest in being a part of that experiment. So that's another issue to think about here.
All right. As you said, watch this space. DBC's Lily
Indeed.
Jamali. So good to have you.
It's great to be back. Thanks for having me on, Megan.
And thanks to all of you for watching Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. Jesus Alvarado produced this episode. I'm Meghan McCarty Carino. This is APM.